Good evening and welcome to the Lucid Podcast. My name is Shelley, and on this podcast I explore everything because one, I believe in the infinite, unbounded potential within each of us, and two, because I believe everything is connected to everything else. Today I'm doing something I haven't done in a while, and this is my Shelley's Journey recording. Because I feel like it's time to share my journey. So I'm just going to drop right in where I am right now. For Christmas, it's December 27th. So for Christmas, I got my daughter a book. I know I've mentioned it before. Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It was given to me. I was trying to figure it out somewhere between 13 and 16 years ago. I'm not entirely sure. I know when I received it, it was from a male friend who, interestingly enough, at the time, he was incredibly mature. Like, he was the man that I hope to meet today. And I was not interested in him at the time, even though he was interested in me, because I lacked a lot of maturity. And I was not ready for a man who actually could meet a full-bodied woman. And now, all these years later, I very much wish that I would and will meet a man like that. And I wish very much that I had been able to receive what he was offering me, because it was very beautiful. So interesting that this man, amazing man, gave me this book, sent me on this decades-long journey, and now hope to find someone like him again. Okay, so I got this for my daughter this Christmas, and of course, giving it to her, I decided to read one of the stories in it that literally has defined the last 15 years of my life. The story is called The Handless Maiden, and I remember when I read it, I just wept and wept and wept for years. Like, literally wept for years, and read the story over and over again for years, just struggled through. And part of the crux of the story is it happens over the course of at least 7 years, possibly longer. Part of the story has been lost, this ancient tale. And I remember when I first started reading it, and the first few years were just nothing but pain, and the loss and the betrayal and just understanding all that. As a woman, and as I'm going to say, as a woman, I don't think this pertains only to women. I think men could absolutely read this book and should read this book. But I'm going to speak as a woman. And as I'm reading the book, and I'm thinking, there's no way this is going to go on for 7 years. I won't last. Whatever, blah, blah, blah. So like 15 years later, I read the whole section of The Handless Maiden today in the book. And I'm happy to say I've completed it, which doesn't mean anything. I just want to say I'm wise enough now to know that these are cycles. And so I absolutely will go through this cycle again, but I don't believe it will ever be the same. Meaning once you survive that initial descent into the underworld, having lost your hand, had your hands cut off, the handless maiden, and experiencing the totality of that betrayal and going through the different descents and losses. I don't think it's ever the same, but absolutely, I don't think I'm going to not experience that again. But the losses will be much smaller. I'm so much wiser. The injuries will be far less. I don't expect to completely sever my hands again, as they were in the past. So anyway, what I'm getting at is, as I was reading through the story, a few things stood out, and I wrote down some of the pages, some of the things I wanted to read. And the first one, like I said, I read this story over and over and over. I read it so many times. And it was like my literally was my lifeblood, my mast. It kept me going through times when nothing else would, and there was nothing but pain and confusion. Definitely a lifeline. But what was interesting today as I read it, I came across this introductory little paragraph about endurance. I swear I've never read it. I swear it was not in the book. Obviously it was. But I did not understand the overarching theme of the Handless Maiden until I read it today. And I thought, no wonder I'm so exhausted. And no wonder that I have this indomitable, enduring spirit and capacity that won't give up, because that is literally, this is the initiation for endurance. Okay, so I'm gonna read you that paragraph here. The Handless Maiden is about women's initiation into the underground forest through the rite of endurance. The word endurance sounds as though it means to continue without cessation. And while this is an occasional part of the tasks underlying the tale, the word endurance also means to harden, to make sturdy, to make robust, to strengthen. And this is the principal thrust of the tale and the generative feature of a woman's long psychic life. We don't just go on to go on. Endurance means we are making something. The teaching of endurance occurs all throughout nature. The pads of wolf pups' paws are soft as clay when the pups are born. It is only the ranging, the roaming, the treks on which their parents take them that toughen them up. I have seen wolf mothers plunge their pups into the coldest streams and run until a pup is splay-legged and can hardly keep up, and then run them some more. They are toughening up the sweet little spirit, investing it with strength and resilience. In mythos, the teaching of endurance is one of the rites of the great wild mother. It is her timeless ritual to make her offspring strong. It is she who toughens us, makes us potent and enduring. Endurance. So much for me of this, the Handless Maiden tale, and of these last 15 years was about the betrayal, the loss of hands, just loss in general, the life-death life cycle. I didn't understand and miss this whole part of endurance and enduring through all of it. So reading that today, I was like, no wonder I have felt like I have been enduring. And it just going on and on and on and on. That's part of this whole cycle. That is the life-death life cycle of this. That is one of the rites of passage. Totally over my head. So if anyone's out there enduring, welcome. Okay, this next little bit I want to read was, I wrote here, burn it to the ground. So there was another part of this that I didn't fully understand until today. And then reading this, I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds about right. The poor ego is always looking for an easy way out. We seal our own fates when we do this. Deep in the wintry parts of our minds, we are hardy stock. We know there is no such thing as a work-free transformation. We know that we will have to burn to the ground in one way or another. I want to read that again. Not burn it. We know that we will have to burn to the ground in one way or another, and then sit right in the ashes of who we once thought we were, and go on from there. So I just want to say so many times, I don't want to allow myself to be burned to the ground, but it's the only way. It's the only way to make new what was once old. I'm going to skip a bunch of pages and then come backwards. I wasn't going to, but I suddenly realized I think this next one will be better read now because usefulness and uselessness. This is the pattern. In all dying, there is uselessness that becomes useful. In all dying, there is uselessness that becomes useful as we pick our way through it. In all dying, uselessness becomes useful. That's another big one. And in this, here's another one. So again, it's talking about when we let all the parts of us die that need to, and we awaken to the horrible meaning of the bargain. This is when we've cut off our hands thinking we're going to get something for it. We're going to let the mother and father cut off our hands because we think there's some great riches in store for us. We will gain love if we let this happen, not understanding the horrible meaning of the bargain. Now a woman's pain becomes conscious when we finally understand the price of the bargain we've made. Now a woman's pain becomes conscious. When it is conscious, she can do something with it. She can use it to learn with, to grow strong with, to become a knowing woman. And over the long term, there will be even better news yet. That which has been given away can be reclaimed and restored to its proper place in the psyche. So, love that one. Okay, now this one is an old promise, and I thought this one was really beautiful. And again, like I said, I've read this story for years and years and years, and so many times, and very, very carefully, over and over and over, not quick readings. But today, these things stood out, and I just think they're so beautiful. Okay, this is a very old promise. The tale resurrects a knowing about a very old promise. The promise is that the descent into the underworld, i.e. death of ourselves, will nourish. The descent will nourish. The death will nourish, even though it is dark, even though one feels one has lost one's way. Even in the midst of not knowing, not seeing, wandering blind, there is something, an inordinately present someone who keeps pace. This is the promise. When we go left, it goes left. When we go right, it follows close behind, bearing us up, making a way for us. That's the promise, and I do believe it's true. I don't believe we're ever alone. This is a good one. Rest on our laurels. Okay, so this one, I still want to do this. I freaking want to do this all the time. There we go. Okay, so beware then the sensation of repose and accomplishment that can seduce humans into feeling that a spiritual deed or completion of a spiritual cycle is a point where one may stop and rest on her laurels forevermore. There is no resting place or a completion at the end of life. The living woman must continue, else she becomes lethargic in her cycles. So I know there are a lot of times where I can tell that I've accomplished something, some kind of spiritual deed or completion of a spiritual cycle, or even in the physical realm. an emotional growth or a mental growth or, a physical healing. And I so believe I should be able to stop and rest on my laurels forevermore. But doing that, you become lethargic in the cycles of the soul. So another reminder there. And then one about surrender, because surrender's been so huge. So this is what I'll say about surrender. I have this whole other podcast I was going to do about true surrender. I haven't gotten to it yet, but we're going to touch on surrender here because it's been a huge part of my journey in the last few months. Wandering in such a manner wrings out every last bit of our resistance. This is when we're just like, we've just been wandering on a journey for so long that helps to wring out every last bit of resistance, every last possibility of hubris, to flatten every last objection we might think up. For wandering this way is tiring, but this special kind of fatigue causes us to finally surrender and just follow what comes. And what I want to say about surrender, the biggest thing for me, surrender, I read two different things came up in the last few months for me about surrender. And I've always thought of surrender as a very passive state. And two different people that I was listening to or reading, I don't remember exactly how, but they saw surrender as very active states. One of them said surrender is open-hearted participation with the world. That true surrender is open-hearted participation with the world. And just blew me away. I was like, that's not my idea of surrender. My idea of surrender in the past has always been very passive. So I have been surrendering more and more and understanding that my surrender is an active, open-hearted participation with the world. The other person used it as a willing participation. They both use the word participation, but a willing participation. So I decide that when I surrender, I'm going to willingly and open-heartedly participate with the world. That's actually what true surrender is. So there's that one. Undivided, one more. And I don't even quite remember what this one is, but it's the last one I'll read here. Oh, okay. So talking about part of any trip to the underworld is there's oftentimes a birth. There, you go down there and you give birth or you bring back a new life. So in this sense, it's considered giving birth. To give birth, so you're down in the underworld. To give birth is the psychic equivalent of becoming one's self. One self. Meaning an undivided psyche. Before this birth of new life in the underworld, a woman is likely to think all parts and personalities within her are rather like a hodgepodge of vagrants who wander in and out of her life. In the underworld birth, a woman learns that anything that brushes by her is a part of her. So true. I want to pause here and just say that again. When you go into the underworld, when you're deep within yourself, you finally begin to be all the parts of yourself, which means anything that's in there is part of you. And that's not always really nice to realize. Okay. Anything that brushes by her is a part of her. Sometimes this differentiation of all the aspects of psyche is hard to do, especially with the tendencies and urges we find repulsive. The challenge of loving unappealing aspects of ourselves is as much of an endeavor as any heroine has ever tried. For the majority of women, mothering and raising the internal selves is a creative work, a way of knowledge. So, what I would say about that undivided self, maybe some of you have spent a little time, you've heard about the IFS, Internal Family Systems. I'm pretty sure his name is Richard Schwartz. Anyway, if you've seen the movie, oh my gosh, what is it? Inside Out? One of those animated movies where inside of you, you have a whole family system. You've got the, anyway, any kind of family member you can fathom on the outside. We have this whole vast array, hodgepodge array of family members inside of us that are having their own Thanksgiving dinner, so to speak. And I've, touched upon that a little bit in the past, and I found it interesting. And when I first heard about it, it reminded me of the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Many years ago, I read something about, making friends with your demons. Same kind of thing. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do this. But in reading this story and thinking about the IFS, the internal family systems, and just kind of considering all the different characters that are inside of me, some of them I think are amazing and they should be like crowned with jewels. They're just so fabulous, and others are so repulsive to me. And I'm just like, would you please like go away and die? And I like never want to see you again or admit that I'm related to you. Like I said, it's like the Thanksgiving dinner where, half of the family members you think are glorious and the other half you are sure there's no way you could be related to them because they're hideous beyond your wildest dreams. So there you are at Thanksgiving dinner, and you don't need to, but it would be wise to make some kind of peace with all of them, since they're all you and they're all living inside of you. That's what that chapter reminded me of. And I would definitely say that's a huge part of my journey right now. Making peace with. So I'm going to touch upon my rape trial. Here's the crazy thing. Last year, January 3rd, 2024, which is December 27th, 2024. So almost exactly a year ago, I did something I never thought I could do. I got on the witness stand and I testified at the pretrial. I called it my Everest's hardest thing I may have ever done. Well, January 3rd, 2025 is just around the corner, and I will be going to a hearing. I mean, it's just like this trial. It's just like not even freaking moved. It has been just so slow. I mean, talk about a descent into the underworld that won't end. It just goes on and on and on. Anyway, so every time I have to deal with the trial, not only am I dealing with the trauma and the horror and the fear and just all the external stuff that deals with that, but I also have to face those parts of me that I just detest, like the part of me that it's like, why did I ever make certain choices? Like, why was I ever with this person? I certainly didn't think they were capable of this, but there are parts of me that I'm still trying to make peace with, that I blame and feel shame about, and think that if they weren't there, if they weren't inside of me, if I hadn't have made certain decisions or if I hadn't acted in certain ways, that I wouldn't have been raped. I'm still making peace with the societal, centuries, millennia old, societal stories that it's somehow my fault that this happened. If I hadn't behaved that way, looked that way, spoken that way, said, whatever. So definitely having, working on the undivided parts within myself. So, that's it. I don't have a lot to say today, but I just wanted to talk about this book. It also feels really powerful for me to be passing this book to my daughter. I got it when I was late 30s. She's getting it in her just 20s. I guess she'll be turning 27, or is she 27? Is that terrible? I don't know. she's obviously getting it 20 years, well, I guess not, but a decade before me, which honestly I think is about the right time. I don't know that I would give anyone much younger than their, later 20s this book, or they could start it sooner, but definitely takes a level of maturity and some experience before you can begin to digest and take the journeys that are offered in the book. So it feels interesting to, in a way, be passing this wisdom to my daughter. I certainly haven't completed any of it, but I can feel in myself that I can hold it enough, that I can now hold the stories, the wisdom, the journeys, the descents into the underworld and the returns with enough strength and with enough wisdom that I can hand her an ember and say, here, begin, and you can come to me. Not that I can take the journey for you, but if you come to me, I can hold you. I can hold you in whatever space you found yourself in. And I will not be afraid. And that's maybe mostly true, but not totally true. I mean, there are times where I worry. I think, I hope she doesn't make, such and such decisions and find herself in such and such a place. So it's not that I don't have my own worries and fears and concerns, but I don't fear in the way that I have a lot of faith in the process, meaning when she finds herself in the underworld and she is lost and confused in all the things, I understand enough to hold her and say, you are beautiful. You are finding your way through. You will be okay. I can be a mother for her. I can be what I didn't have. And that is fucking priceless. I wish that my mother had handed me this book. And in her way, my mother did the absolute best she did, like a million times better than her mother. Okay, so I'm going to hand her that. Absolutely. But I wish that I had a mother or even an older sister that could hold the space for me that I can hold for my daughter. And I don't know if my daughter will ever choose to have children. Totally fine. But I do believe one day, not only she'll have the capacity, but she will brilliantly hold an amazing space for others. And for women, absolutely. But I think there are plenty of men who are wanting to take these same journeys. And this book is every bit as relevant to them. I think we're slowly beginning to understand that, yes, women need to get a foothold in our culture and society that is equal to men. But that means men also need to be taking these journeys. So this certainly isn't just a woman's, but women are fighting pretty hard to make sure we have that right. And I say that, for my son, I absolutely think I'll hand him this book one day when the time comes. I don't know when that is, but there'll come a day when I'll hand him this book and he'll read it and he will be equally brilliant to hold space for men and women alike. So pretty remarkable. Just my children are amazing, remarkable people that continue to teach me the very, very deepest, most challenging and most beautiful and most sacred lessons in life, in love, forgiveness, patience. So very, very special, very sacred. And they are my everything. So I'm going to probably be sharing more about my story. I feel like things are going to start happening with the trial. I don't know why. It's just like it's time. I'm probably ready, whatever that means. But I think that this has been a journey of all of us preparing and being ready. The rapist, I mean, obviously our journeys are deeply entwined, whatever journey he needs to have. He's needed to prepare his journey. I've needed to prepare myself to have whatever journey I'm going to have. Both the attorneys, obviously, they're deeply entwined in this. The judge, so many characters. I often sit back and just marvel at all of us that have come together. The attorneys, the judge, myself, the rapist. These 5 people who are going to have a very intimate journey together. We don't know each other really that well. And each of us is going to have a very unique journey, and yet we need each other to play our part so the others can have the experience they're going to have. So I think that's been a powerful thing as far as the rape trial is the timing, understanding that the timing is not just all about me and am I ready to have the experience I'm going to have, but are all of us ready to come together to have the experience that all of us are going to have. And I don't know if I'm conveying that well. So at the risk of beating a dead horse, I'm going to say it again. The timing of life isn't about just me. People are often like, oh, well, when you're ready, it'll happen. Maybe. Maybe when everything's ready, it'll happen, meaning everything in life involves other players. Even sitting alone in my room, it involves other players exiting. Like nothing is happening in a vacuum. And so when all the parts and pieces and people are ready to come together, then they do. And it's more than just one person dictating the universe. I could be wrong. But that's how this feels anyway. And it feels like things will move forward with the rape trial, which is a relief. And I'm also terrified. And I still have no idea what lessons I have to learn in it. I don't know that I'll appreciate or enjoy them. I'm going to do my best to surrender, open-hearted participation, willing participation, and trust that by doing that, by showing up in that way, there'll be less resistance from me. Hopefully I'll be able to let things be what they are. And my goal isn't necessarily to be great through it. I don't have any super high expectations for myself. I'm okay if I struggle the whole way through. If I cry the whole way through, whatever I need to do, I'm okay with that. I guess my expectation is once it's over, I hope that I can look back and see how the experience somehow just helped me integrate more of my internal family, make peace with the parts of myself that I still blame or I don't find very, I was going to say attractive, but I don't mean attractive in the physical way, but attractive as in I don't always see the worth of some of my internal family members. They just seem like they're a pain. So if I can finish this trial, win, lose, or draw, no idea how it's going to turn out. But if I can come out on the other end as a more integrated, sort of more puzzle pieces falling into place. I was going to say wholeness, but I don't even think that's it. I feel like I'm whole right now, but that my parts aren't really getting along or working together. So I would like there to be a little more internal acceptance of self, of the many parts of myself. And I do feel like the trial could assist in that. As hideous as this whole thing sounds. Would not wish this on anyone. And I'm sorry that it is a thing and should ever be a thing. Okay, this is way longer than I thought, but there's an update for now. And you haven't read this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, highly recommend it. You can get it and just flip it open, pick a story. Oh, the red shoes. That's what I turned to. And the red shoes. That's a great one. And an easy one. Easy one. You can just sort of read one of the little stories, break it down. She breaks it down after and put it down. A few weeks, a few months later, a few years later, pick it up. Open, read another story. Bluebeard. There's another good one. Maybe read it to friends, men and women. Maybe we can begin to take, men and women can begin to take these journeys together. And as sacred as each of our genders are, I don't know that we always need to be quite so confined, especially as other people choose genders beyond male and female. We can maybe begin to have more of a human experience. Yeah. So, I think the last thing I'll say is I texted a friend about a week ago. This little thought I had as I was waking. I can't remember if I was meditating or waking up or I don't know. And I texted her this thought I had about compassion. Many days went by. I didn't hear back. And then when she texted back, she was like, I've had to read this like over and over before I finally got it. She goes, and now that I get it, it's like just, oh, yes, it was just like so powerful. So I'm going to tell you what the thought was. It's so in your face, obtuse and apparent that it doesn't sound like anything. But when you really get it, it's everything. And the thought was, I'm understanding compassion and I'm experiencing viscerally, deeply, spiritually, experiencing compassion in a deeper and deeper and deeper way. Because I realize everyone is having a human experience. Everyone is having a human experience. And so they are worthy of nothing but my deepest compassion. It doesn't matter what their experience is. It's a human experience, which means everyone is worthy of my deepest compassion because everyone is having a human experience. There you go. I love you all. Take care. And see you in 2025. Bye-bye.